In professional golf, the player-caddy relationship is the most important partnership in sports. There is no manager, no coach in your ear during competition, no teammate to lean on. Just two men, a bag full of clubs, and 4 hours of pressure where one bad read or one wrong word can cost a tournament and millions of dollars. When it works, it is beautiful. The best partnerships last decades and feel like marriages built on shared scar tissue. But when it breaks in public. Caddies walk off mid-round. Players fire their best friend the day before a major. Loopers shove hecklers on national television. Old partners give interviews years later that explode whatever goodwill was left. Today we are going to count down 6 of the ugliest, strangest, and most personal player-caddy meltdowns in modern golf. Some of these stories will surprise you. One of them might break your heart. Let's get into it. Number 6. Mike "Fluff" Cowan and Tiger Woods. This was the first famous firing of Tiger Woods' career, and it had nothing to do with bad reads or bad bag work. Fluff Cowan was the legendary white-mustached caddy who had been on Tiger's bag since Tiger turned pro in 1996. He was there for the 1997 Masters when Tiger won by 12 shots. He was, by all accounts, doing a perfectly good job. The problem was that Fluff had become a star in his own right. He did television commercials. He gave magazine interviews. Fans showed up at tournaments wanting Fluff's autograph as much as Tiger's. For Tiger, who was already building the most calculated brand in the history of the sport, this was a problem. In 1999, he let Fluff go. The reasoning leaked out in the months that followed. Tiger wanted a caddy who was invisible in public and indispensable in private. Fluff was too big, too friendly, too quotable. The firing was not personal in the way later splits would be. It was business. Fluff landed on his feet, joining Jim Furyk's bag for the next 2 decades. But the lesson was clear. If you caddied for Tiger Woods, your job was to disappear behind him. The moment you stopped doing that, you stopped being his caddy. Number 5. Bones McKay and Phil Mickelson. For 25 years, Jim Bones McKay was Phil Mickelson's right hand. They came up together as kids on tour, won 5 majors together, and built one of the most respected partnerships in the history of professional golf. They were not just colleagues, they were brothers in a way that very few player-caddy pairings ever achieve. And then in June of 2017, in the middle of a season, they announced they were splitting. Both sides released carefully worded statements about mutual respect and the time being right. Nobody bought it. There were reports of tension over Phil's gambling, over his refusal to listen to club selection advice, over what insiders described as a slow drift over years that finally hit a breaking point. Bones had carried Phil's bag through 5 majors and dozens of meltdowns. Phil had carried Bones through divorces and family struggles. When it ended quietly and without explanation, which somehow made it feel sadder than a public blow-up would have. Bones moved to NBC as a commentator, then eventually returned to caddying for Justin Thomas in 2021. Phil hired his brother Tim. The two men remain publicly friendly, but every interview either of them has given about the split carries the same quiet weight. Something broke between them that neither has ever fully explained. Sometimes the loudest splits are the silent ones. Number 4. JP Fitzgerald and Rory McIlroy. The Open Championship of 2017 at Royal Birkdale produced one of the most extraordinary mid-round moments in modern major championship history. Rory McIlroy had just bogeyed 4 of his first 5 holes. He was furious. He was muttering on the way to the 6th tee. And JP Fitzgerald, his caddy of 9 years, stopped him and delivered a pep talk that was caught on a hot mic. "You are Rory McIlroy. What the hell are you doing?" McIlroy birdied 4 of the next 8 holes and finished tied 4th. He credited Fitzgerald in the press conference afterward. He said the pep talk had saved his tournament. And then, less than a month later, he fired him. The official line was that the partnership had simply run its course. The unofficial line was harder. Fitzgerald had become, over the years, a slight target for Rory's frustration on bad days. Bad reads were caddy fault. Wrong clubs were caddy fault. The pep talk that saved Birkdale had been, in retrospect, the last act of a partnership where one party had stopped trusting the other long before. Rory replaced him with Harry Diamond, his childhood friend from Northern Ireland, a man with no caddying experience at the elite level. Diamond is still on his bag today. Fitzgerald moved on, but the symbolism of the moment was hard to miss. Sometimes the person you publicly credit for saving you is the same person you have already decided to let go. Number 3. Tim Tucker and Bryson DeChambeau. In July of 2021, hours before the first round of the Rocket Mortgage Classic, Bryson DeChambeau's longtime caddy Tim Tucker quit. Not after the round, not after the tournament, not after a private conversation. He quit hours before tee time, leaving DeChambeau scrambling to find a replacement. Bryson's personal trainer Ben Showman grabbed the bag in an emergency. The story that emerged in the weeks that followed was not flattering for Bryson. Tucker had been DeChambeau's caddy for 6 years. He had been on the bag for all 8 of Bryson's tour wins, including the 2020 US Open at Winged Foot. But Bryson's relentless experimentation, his constant rule-pushing, his very public meltdowns at the Memorial earlier that summer, when he had complained about his driver on camera, had created an atmosphere Tucker no longer wanted to live in. Sources close to Tucker described the breaking point as years in the making. Bryson would change his clubs, his ball flight, his diet, his swing, sometimes within the same week. Tucker had been asked to manage a player whose entire competitive identity was built on changing everything constantly. The night before the Rocket Mortgage Classic, Tucker decided he was done. There was no farewell post, there was no joint statement, he simply did not show up. For Bryson, who has lost a string of relationships in the years since, the Tucker walkout was the first public indication that the price of working with him had grown higher than the rewards. Number 2. Kesler, Karine and Patrick Reed. The President's Cup in Melbourne, December of 2019. Patrick Reed, already 2 weeks removed from the bunker incident at the Hero World Challenge where he had been penalized for improving his lie, was in the middle of his foursomes match when his caddy Kesler Karine stepped off the course and shoved a heckler. The fan had been screaming insults at Reed all morning. Karine, who is Reed's brother-in-law, as well as his caddy, finally snapped. He left the course, confronted the spectator, and pushed him. The PGA Tour banned Karine from caddying for Reed on the final day of the event. Patrick had to use his sister, Karine's wife, as a temporary fill-in to caddy for him. The moment crystallized everything about Patrick Reed that the golf world had been trying to articulate for years. He was a player whose chaos extended beyond his own person, into the people closest to him. The caddy incident was, like the bunker incident before it, both shocking and somehow not surprising at all. Karine returned to the bag after the ban, and remains there to this day. But the Melbourne moment is now part of the permanent record of one of the most controversial relationships in professional golf. Caddies are supposed to absorb the abuse, so the player does not have to. When the caddy himself becomes the one who breaks, you have learned something important about the player he works for. Number 1. Steve Williams and Tiger Woods. This is the one, and it is not close. For 12 years from 1999 to 2011, Steve Williams was Tiger Woods' caddy. They won 13 major championships together. They won 72 PGA Tour events together. They were by some measures, the most successful player-caddy partnership in the history of professional golf. And then in the summer of 2011, in a stretch when Tiger was working through the aftermath of his personal scandal and his physical injuries, he fired Williams without warning while Williams was caddying for Adam Scott in a one-off arrangement that Tiger had approved. Williams found out by phone call. He was furious. He went on television in New Zealand and called the firing the most surprising and unsettling event of his career. Then, weeks later, when Adam Scott won the Bridgestone Invitational, with Williams on the bag, Williams said on camera that it was the best win of my caddying career. The not-so-subtle implication that this victory meant more than any of the 13 majors he had won with Tiger landed exactly where Williams intended it to land. It got worse from there. At a Caddy Awards dinner in November of 2011, Williams made a racially charged comment about Tiger that became an immediate international story. He later apologized. Tiger responded with the kind of calculated, surgical statement that Tiger Woods has spent his entire career perfecting. Years passed. Both men softened in public. But the relationship that had delivered more wins than any pairing in the modern game ended in betrayal, public humiliation, and a wound that neither side has ever fully closed. Steve Williams remains one of the most successful caddies in history. Tiger Woods remains one of the most successful golfers in history. But the partnership that should have been celebrated as a model of excellence is remembered instead as the loudest, ugliest divorce the sport has ever produced. Every one of these stories tells the same lesson in a different language. The player-caddy bond is a partnership of trust under impossible pressure. When it holds, it produces greatness. When it breaks louder than almost any other relationship in professional sports. If this one landed for you, drop a like before you scroll away, subscribe so you do not miss the next one, and tell us in the comments, which player-caddy split surprised you the most?